The German Shepherd pressed her 2 front paws together like she was praying. Her 3 puppies lay shivering in a torn cardboard box beside her on the frozen highway shoulder. Cars roared past. Nobody stopped. Nobody cared. But when former Navy SEAL Marcus Cole slowed his truck and looked into her amber eyes, something broke inside him. She wasn't begging. She was choosing him. What Marcus didn't know was that rescuing these dogs would drag him into a fight against a man who would stop at nothing to destroy his own family. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. If compassion still matters to you, subscribe and stay until the end. Marcus Cole gripped the steering wheel and tried to remember the last time he felt anything at all. 6 months since he left the teams. 6 months of silence so loud it screamed. He had driven from Virginia to Montana without stopping except for gas, as if distance could outrun the ghosts that traveled with him. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. Probably his sister again asking if he was okay. He wasn't okay. He hadn't been okay since Kabul, since the explosion that took 3 of his brothers and left him standing wondering why. "You're not broken," the Navy psychiatrist had told him. "You're recalibrating." Marcus had laughed at that. Recalibrating. Like he was a machine that just needed new software. The traffic ahead slowed to a crawl. Construction zone, orange cones, workers in reflective vests standing around like they were waiting for something that would never come. Marcus checked his mirrors out of habit, scanned the tree line, noted the exits. 12 years of training didn't disappear just because you turned in your trident. That's when he saw her. A German Shepherd sitting perfectly still at the edge of the highway. Her black and tan coat was matted with dirt. Her ribs showed through her fur. But what stopped Marcus cold was her posture. Her front paws were pressed together. Not begging, not cowering, something else entirely. Beside her sat a torn cardboard box. Inside it 3 small shapes huddled against each other, trembling. Puppies. Barely a month old. Marcus felt his foot ease off the accelerator. His chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. "Keep driving," he told himself. "Not your problem." He passed her. The truck rolled forward another 50 yards, but the dog's eyes stayed with him. Amber brown. Steady. Unafraid. He had seen that look before. On the faces of men who had made peace with death, but refused to stop fighting. Damn it. Marcus pulled onto the shoulder and killed the engine. The cold hit him like a slap when he stepped out. Montana winter didn't play games. It took what it wanted and didn't apologize. He approached slowly, hands visible the way you approach anything that might bolt or bite. The German Shepherd watched him come, but didn't move. Her body trembled with exhaustion, but her eyes never wavered. "Easy, girl," Marcus said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." He crouched beside the cardboard box and pulled back the flap. 3 puppies stared up at him with eyes barely open. They whimpered, pressing closer together for warmth that was running out. Marcus looked at the mother dog. Really looked at her. A groove circled her neck, the kind of mark left by a rope pulled too tight for too long. "Someone did this to you," Marcus said. Not a question. The dog held his gaze. Then she stood slowly, painfully, and took 1 step toward him. She pressed her nose against his hand. It was trust, pure and absolute. Marcus had commanded men into combat. He had made split-second decisions that meant life or death. But nothing had prepared him for this moment, a starving mother dog choosing to believe in him when every experience should have taught her otherwise. He shrugged off his jacket and wrapped it around the box of puppies. "All right," he said. "Let's go." The dog followed him to the truck without hesitation. She jumped into the back seat and sat down spine straight, as if she had been waiting her whole life for this ride. Marcus noticed a rusted metal tag hanging from her worn collar. Only one letter was still readable. L. "Luna," Marcus said, testing the name. "That's what I'll call you." The dog's ears flicked forward. She didn't object. As Marcus pulled back onto the highway, he glanced in the rearview mirror. Luna was watching him. Not the road. Not the trees. Him. He had the strangest feeling that he hadn't rescued her at all. She had rescued him. Pinewood Ridge wasn't a town so much as a suggestion of one. A diner with foggy windows, a hardware store with a hand-painted sign, a post office older than anyone's memory. Marcus had chosen it precisely because nothing ever happened here. He rented a cabin at the edge of the forest, the kind of place where you could fire a gun and no one would call the cops because they'd assume you were hunting. The nearest neighbor was half a mile away. Perfect for a man who needed to disappear. The first night with the dogs was chaos. The puppies needed feeding every few hours. Luna refused to let them out of her sight. Marcus found himself heating formula at 3 a.m., wondering what the hell he was doing. "You know, I don't know anything about dogs, right?" he told Luna, as she watched him fumble with the feeding bottle. She tilted her head, unimpressed. "I spent 12 years learning how to break things, not fix them." Luna lay down beside the box of puppies and exhaled slowly. The tension in her body eased for the first time since he'd found her. Marcus sat back against the wall, exhaustion settling over him like a familiar weight. "Fine," he said. "We'll figure it out." The veterinary clinic sat on the edge of town, clean but unremarkable. Marcus carried the box of puppies inside, while Luna walked beside him, her presence steady and watchful. Dr. Paul Henderson was a man in his 60s with silver hair and hands that had clearly seen decades of work. He examined the puppies first, his expression neutral but focused. "These little ones are lucky," he said finally. "Another day in that cold and we'd be having a different conversation." Marcus nodded. "What about her?" Henderson turned his attention to Luna. He ran his hands over her ribs, checked her teeth, listened to her heart. When he reached the scar around her neck, he paused. "This wasn't an accident," Henderson said quietly. "I know." The vet looked up at Marcus with something like assessment in his eyes. "You ex-military, that obvious, takes one to know one. Vietnam, 71. Marcus felt a flicker of recognition. The way Henderson held himself, the steadiness in his gaze. Some things never left you. "Someone came in last week," Henderson said slowly. "An older woman. She was looking for a German shepherd with 3 puppies. She was scared, Mr. Cole. Really scared." Marcus felt his instincts sharpen. "Did she leave a name?" "Eleanor Whitmore. Lives on the old Whitmore property about 10 miles east. Her family's been here for generations." Henderson hesitated. "She's a good woman. Whatever's happening, she didn't deserve it." Marcus drove home with more questions than answers. Who was Eleanor Whitmore? Why had Luna ended up on that highway? And what had put that kind of fear in an old woman's eyes? Luna sat in the back seat watching the road with an intensity that felt almost human. "You know something, don't you?" Marcus asked. Luna's ears swiveled toward his voice, but she didn't look away from the window. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat in the chair near the heater, watching the puppies breathe. He had named them during the drive home. Shadow the smallest and darkest. Scout the one who couldn't stop moving. Hope quiet and watchful, with a pale smudge on her chest. Around midnight, Luna rose suddenly. Her body went rigid, ears pricked forward, attention locked on the front door. Marcus was on his feet before he realized he'd moved. "What is it?" Luna didn't bark. She simply stood there, every muscle tensed, waiting. Marcus grabbed the flashlight by the door and stepped onto the porch. The night was silent. Too silent. No wind, no animals. Just the weight of darkness pressing in. He scanned the tree line, the driveway, the road beyond. Nothing. But Luna remained tense for another full minute before she finally relaxed and returned to her place beside the puppies. Marcus stood on the porch for a long time, the cold seeping through his clothes. Someone was out there. Someone was watching. The knock came 3 days later. Marcus opened the door to find a woman in her 70s standing on his porch. She was small and spare, her silver hair pinned neatly back, her blue eyes filled with a hope so desperate it hurt to look at. "Are they alive?" she whispered. Marcus stepped aside. "Come in." Eleanor Whitmore moved like a woman who had forgotten how to breathe. She stopped just inside the door, her gaze finding Luna immediately. A sound escaped her, something between a sob and a prayer. "Oh, my sweet girl." Eleanor lowered herself slowly to her knees, extending her hand. "I thought I'd lost you forever." Luna approached cautiously, sniffed Eleanor's fingers, then pressed her head against the old woman's palm. Eleanor broke. The tears came silently at first, then with shuddering sobs that shook her entire body. She wrapped her arms around Luna's neck and held on like she was drowning. Marcus gave her time. Some things couldn't be rushed. When Eleanor finally composed herself, she sat on the edge of his couch, hands folded tightly in her lap, and told him everything. "I raised Luna from a puppy," she began. "My neighbor moved away 5 years ago. Couldn't keep her. I took her in. And the puppies, born 2 months ago, under my porch where the wind couldn't reach them. I was going to keep them all. I had it all planned out." Her voice cracked. She paused, gathering herself. "My nephew Victor didn't agree." Marcus felt the shift, the subtle darkening of the story. "Victor Whitmore," Eleanor continued, "my brother's only son. He's been managing the family finances since my brother passed. He's been pressuring me to sell the land." "Sell to who?" "A company called Horizon Development Group. They've been buying up property around Pinewood Ridge for months. Victor says it's the smart thing to do. He says I'm too old to maintain the land. He says the dogs are a liability." Eleanor's hands were shaking now. "He took them, Mr. Cole, 3 weeks ago, while I was at church. I came home and they were gone. He told me he'd taken care of it. Those were his exact words." Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. "He dumped them on the highway." "I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know where he'd taken them. I searched everywhere. The shelter, the woods, I put up flyers. I called the clinic every day." She looked at him with eyes that held 3 weeks of sleepless nights. "When Dr. Henderson called and said someone had found them, I thought maybe God still listened to old women who pray too much." Marcus walked Eleanor to her car an hour later. She moved slowly, reluctantly, as if leaving Luna again might break something that couldn't be fixed. "Mrs. Whitmore," Marcus said carefully, "your nephew, what kind of man is he?" Eleanor stopped. Her face hardened in a way that surprised him. "Victor is the kind of man who smiles while he's hurting you, the kind who makes you feel crazy for noticing. He's charming when he needs to be, and cold when he thinks no one's watching." She turned to face Marcus directly. "My brother loved him, spoiled him really. After my brother died, Victor changed. Or maybe he just stopped pretending. Does he know where you are right now? Eleanor's hesitation told Marcus everything he needed to know. He'll find out, she said quietly. He always does. The phone call came that night. Marcus was checking on the puppies when his phone buzzed. Blocked number. He answered anyway. This isn't your business. The voice was male-controlled, the kind of calm that came from complete confidence. You've been given a chance to walk away. I suggest you take it. Who is this? Someone who doesn't like complications. The line went dead. Marcus lowered the phone slowly. His heart rate hadn't changed. His breathing remained steady. But something had shifted inside him, something that had been sleeping for 6 months. Luna rose from her place and stood at the window, staring into the darkness. Her body was rigid, her attention absolute. I know, Marcus said quietly. I feel it too. He had spent 12 years fighting enemies in foreign lands. Now the fight had come to him. And this time it was personal. Eleanor returned the next morning with a proposition. There's a house, she said, setting a folder on Marcus's table. Small but clean, on the hill above your cabin. Close enough that I could walk. I want to lease it for you and the dogs. Marcus frowned. That's generous, Mrs. Whitmore, but please. Eleanor's voice cracked. Let me do something. Let me help protect them. Marcus studied her face. The desperation there. The guilt. Why do I feel like there's something you're not telling me? Eleanor looked away. The house. Victor arranged for it. He thinks it's a peace offering, a way to get me to stop fighting him about the land. And you think it's something else? I don't know what I think anymore. She met his eyes. But I know those dogs need to be safe. And right now you're the only person I trust to keep them that way. Marcus thought about the phone call. The threat wrapped in politeness. The way Luna had stood guard all night. I'll look at the house, he said finally. But I'm not making any promises. The house on the hill was exactly what Eleanor had described. Small, clean, unremarkable. The kind of place you'd drive past without a second glance. Marcus walked the property slowly, his training kicking in automatically. Sight lines, cover, escape routes. That's when he found the camera. It was small, no bigger than a thumbnail, mounted under the eaves and angled toward the driveway. The kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. Marcus's jaw tightened. He didn't touch it. Didn't alert whoever was watching that he'd found it. He just memorized its position and walked back to his truck. That night, Marcus did what he did best. He dug. Public records, property transfers, corporate filings, the digital footprint that people thought disappeared but never really did. Horizon Development Group was buying up land all around Pinewood Ridge. Quietly, systematically, through shell companies and intermediaries that obscured the money trail. And Victor Whitmore's name appeared on document after document. Luna sat beside Marcus as he worked her head resting on his knee. Every few minutes her ears would twitch toward the window as if she could hear things he couldn't. This isn't just about your owner's land, Marcus murmured, scrolling through another file. This is bigger. A lot bigger. His phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. You were warned. Marcus stared at the message for a long moment. Then he set the phone down and looked at Luna. They made a mistake, he said quietly. They think I'm just some guy with a dog. Luna's amber eyes held his steady and unblinking. They don't know what I am. Eleanor called early the next morning, her voice thin with panic. Marcus, I need you to come, now. He was in his truck within minutes, Luna in the back seat, the puppies secured in their carrier. Eleanor's home was an old farmhouse, the kind that had weathered 100 years and looked ready for 100 more. But when Marcus pulled into the driveway, he saw the damage immediately. Every window on the ground floor had been shattered. Eleanor stood on the porch wrapped in a bathrobe, her face pale and streaked with tears. "I heard them around 2 a.m., she said, her voice trembling. "By the time I got downstairs, they were gone." Marcus walked the perimeter glass, crunching under his boots. Professional job. No fingerprints. No evidence left behind. Intimidation, not assault. Not yet. "Did you call the police?" Eleanor laughed bitterly. "Sheriff Davis is Victor's golf buddy. What do you think will happen if I report this?" Marcus felt the familiar coldness settling over him. The mission focus. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said carefully, "I need you to tell me exactly what Horizon wants with your land, all of it." Eleanor's face crumpled. "I don't know everything, but Victor, he mentioned something once, when he thought I wasn't listening." "What?" "He said my property was the last piece, that once they had it, nothing could stop the project." She looked at Marcus with frightened eyes. "What project? What are they planning?" Marcus didn't have an answer. Not yet. But he was going to find out. Marcus drove Eleanor back to his cabin. She protested at first, said she couldn't impose, couldn't be a burden. But when Luna walked up to her and pressed against her legs, something in Eleanor broke. "Just for a few days," Marcus said, "until we figure out what's going on." Eleanor nodded, her hand resting on Luna's head. "She always knew, you know, when something was wrong, even before I did." That afternoon, while Eleanor rested and the puppies slept, Marcus made a phone call. The voice that answered was female, sharp, and familiar. Well, Marcus Cole. Thought you disappeared off the face of the earth." "Sarah, I need your help." Sarah Chen had been a military journalist when Marcus knew her, embedded with his unit in Afghanistan. She'd seen things that would break most people, but instead of breaking, she'd gotten sharper. Now she ran an independent investigations firm out of Denver. "This about that development company you were asking about last night." Marcus smiled grimly. "You already looked into it." "Old habits. Horizon Development Group is bad news, Marcus. They've been doing this across 3 states, buying up rural land through shell companies, pressuring elderly owners to sell, then flipping the properties to bigger developers for massive profits. And if someone doesn't want to sell..." Sarah's pause told him everything. "Things happen. Accidents. Fires. Sometimes people just give up." Marcus thought about the shattered windows at Eleanor's home, the warning calls, the camera hidden under the eaves. How deep does this go? Deep enough that you should walk away. "You know I can't do that," Sarah sighed. "Yeah, I figured you'd say that." She agreed to dig deeper. Marcus agreed to be careful. Both of them knew only one of those things was going to happen. Luna woke him that night with a low growl. Marcus was on his feet, instantly muscle memory overriding sleep. The cabin was dark. The puppies were silent. Eleanor's door was closed. Luna stood at the window, her body rigid, her attention locked on something outside. Marcus grabbed the flashlight and moved to the door. He didn't open it, just pressed his ear against the wood and listened. Footsteps. Careful, deliberate, coming up the driveway. He counted 2 sets, maybe 3. Then nothing. He waited 5 minutes. 10, 15. When he finally cracked the door open, the driveway was empty, but in the beam of his flashlight he could see them clearly. Footprints in the frost, leading up to the cabin, and stopping 3 feet from his door. Eleanor found him on the porch the next morning, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise. "You didn't sleep," she said. "I don't sleep much anymore." She sat down beside him, pulling her sweater tight against the cold. "Marcus, I've been thinking about what you're doing for me, for the dogs. It's not right that you should be in danger because of my problems. Mrs. Whitmore, Eleanor." She smiled faintly. "If we're going to be hiding from my nephew together, you might as well call me Eleanor." Marcus nodded. "Eleanor, these aren't just your problems anymore. The moment your nephew decided to threaten me, he made them mine." "But why? You don't even know me. You found some dogs on the highway. That's all this should have been." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Luna emerged from the cabin and lay down at his feet, her warmth seeping through his boots. "When I was deployed," he said finally, "we had this saying, 'The only easy day was yesterday.' It meant that things were always going to get harder, that every day would bring new challenges." He looked at Eleanor. "But it also meant something else. It meant that we'd already survived everything that came before, and if we could do that, we could handle whatever was coming." Eleanor's eyes glistened. "You sound like my brother. Before the war changed him." "War changes everyone. The question is what you do with who you become." Luna lifted her head and rested it on Marcus's knee. Her amber eyes were calm, trusting, absolutely certain of where she belonged. "I spent 6 months running," Marcus said quietly. "From my memories, from my guilt, from everyone who tried to help me." He placed his hand on Luna's head. "Then I found a dog on the highway who refused to give up on her babies, who sat in the freezing cold and prayed, actually prayed for someone to stop." His voice roughened. "If she can have that kind of faith after everything that was done to her, then maybe I can too." Eleanor reached over and squeezed his hand. Her fingers were thin and fragile, but her grip was strong. "My brother would have liked you," she said. Marcus didn't know how to respond to that, so he just sat there watching the sun rise over the pines, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The car appeared around noon. Black Mercedes. Tinted windows. The kind of vehicle that screamed money and menace in equal measure. Marcus watched it roll up the driveway from the kitchen window. Luna was already at the door, her body low and tense, a growl building in her throat. "Eleanor," Marcus said calmly, "stay in the bedroom with the puppies. Don't come out until I tell you." "Marcus, please." She hesitated, then nodded and disappeared down the hall. Marcus opened the door and stepped onto the porch. The man who emerged from the Mercedes was exactly what Marcus expected. Mid-40s, expensive coat, hair perfect, smile that didn't reach his eyes. Victor Whitmore looked like a man who had never been told no in his life. "Mr. Cole," Victor's voice was smooth, practiced. "I've heard a lot about you." "I doubt that." Victor's smile flickered just for a second. Then it returned wider than before. "I'm here to make this simple," he said, approaching the porch. "My aunt is confused. She's elderly. She doesn't understand what's best for her anymore. She seems pretty clear to me. The dogs." Victor gestured vaguely toward the house. "They're a distraction, a burden. I'm prepared to take them off your hands. Proper shelter, professional care. Everyone wins." Luna stepped forward, positioning herself between Victor and the door. She didn't bark. She didn't growl. She just stood there, immovable. Her amber eyes locked on Victor with an intensity that made him stop mid-step. "Interesting," Victor murmured. "She never liked me." Dogs are good judges of character. Victor's mask slipped. Just for a moment. But in that moment, Marcus saw it, the cold calculation, the absolute contempt for anything that couldn't be bought or controlled. "I'm going to say this once," Victor said, his voice losing its smoothness. "Walk away. Take whatever my aunt promised you and disappear. This doesn't concern you." Marcus descended the porch steps slowly, deliberately, until he stood face to face with Victor. They were the same height, but Marcus had 30 pounds of muscle and 12 years of combat experience that made the difference feel much larger. "Let me tell you something about myself," Marcus said quietly. "I've spent most of my adult life in places where people like you send other people's sons to die. I've watched good men bleed out in the sand because someone in a nice office decided their lives were worth less than a quarterly report." He leaned closer. "Your threats don't scare me. Your money doesn't impress me. And if you ever come near these dogs, or your aunt again, you'll find out exactly what 12 years in the teams taught me about making problems disappear." Victor's face went white, then red. His jaw clenched so tight Marcus could hear his teeth grind. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," Victor hissed. "Neither do you." And they stood there for a long moment, two men on the edge of violence, the winter air crackling between them. Then Victor stepped back. His smile returned, but it was different now. Sharp, vicious, promising. "You'll regret this," he said. "Both of you." He turned and walked back to his Mercedes. The engine roared to life. The car disappeared down the driveway in a spray of gravel. Marcus stood there until the sound faded completely. Then he went back inside where Eleanor was waiting with tears streaming down her face, and Luna was already returning to her place beside the puppies. "He's not going to stop," Eleanor whispered. "I know." "What do we do?" Marcus looked at Luna, at the puppies, at the old woman who had trusted him with everything she had left. "We fight back." The silence after Victor left lasted exactly 47 seconds. Marcus counted them. Old habit. In combat, the quiet after contact was when you assessed damage and prepared for the next wave. Eleanor stood in the hallway, her face pale, her hands gripping the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "He's never looked at me like that before," she whispered. "Like I was nothing. Like I was already gone." Marcus guided her to the couch. Luna followed, pressing close to Eleanor's legs, offering warmth that went beyond physical. "Tell me everything about Horizon," Marcus said. "Every detail you can remember. Conversations you overheard, documents you saw, anything." Eleanor closed her eyes. 6 months ago, Victor started coming around more often. At first I thought he was being a good nephew, checking on me, making sure I was okay. But that wasn't it. No, her voice hardened. He started asking questions about the property. How much land exactly? Where the boundaries were? If I had a will? Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "And you told him? I had no reason not to. He's family. Was family." She opened her eyes. Then the offers started coming. Letters from Horizon. Phone calls. Men in suits showing up at my door with contracts I didn't understand. "Did you sign anything?" "Never. But Victor, he has power of attorney for my medical decisions. He got it 3 years ago when I had my hip surgery. I was on pain medication. I didn't read everything carefully." Marcus leaned forward. "Eleanor, does that power of attorney extend to property decisions?" The color drained from her face. I don't know. I never thought to check." "We need to find out. Today." Eleanor's hands were shaking. What if he's already done something? Then we undo it." Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed Sarah Chen. She answered on the second ring. "Tell me you have something," he said. "More than something. Horizon Development Group is a front. The real money comes from a private equity firm called Black Ridge Capital. They specialize in rural land acquisition for industrial development. What kind of industrial? Sarah's pause was heavy. Lithium mining. There's a massive deposit running under that entire region. Pinewood Ridge is sitting on a fortune and nobody knows it yet. Marcus looked at Eleanor. The old woman was watching him with growing terror in her eyes. How much are we talking about? Conservative estimate $300 million. And Eleanor Whitmore's property sits directly over the richest vein. The phone felt heavy in Marcus's hand. $300 million. No wonder Victor was willing to do anything. There's more, Sarah continued. I found records of similar acquisitions in Wyoming and Nevada. Same pattern. Elderly landowners, family pressure, legal manipulation. And Marcus, 3 of those owners died within 6 months of selling. Died how? Officially natural causes, accidents, 1 suicide. Sarah's voice dropped. Unofficially, I don't believe in coincidences. Marcus ended the call and sat down across from Eleanor. He told her everything. Watched her face cycle through shock, then betrayal, then a grief so deep it seemed to age her 10 years in 10 seconds. My brother left Victor everything when he died, she said finally. The business, the investments, all of it. I got the land because it was worthless. That's what everyone said. Just trees and dirt and memories. It's not worthless anymore. No. Eleanor's voice cracked. And Victor knows. He's known all along. Luna lifted her head and whined softly. One of the puppies Scout had woken up and was stumbling toward his mother with unsteady legs. Eleanor watched them with tears rolling down her cheeks. He threw them away like garbage. My Luna. Her babies. Because they were in the way of his money. Eleanor, I should have seen it. Her voice rose. All those years watching him charm everyone, manipulate everyone. I told myself it was just ambition, just business. I made excuses because he was the only family I had left. And she looked at Marcus with eyes that had finally stopped making excuses. I want him to pay. Whatever it takes. I want him to lose everything the way he tried to make me lose everything. Marcus nodded slowly. Then we need proof. Not just suspicions, not just patterns. Something that ties him directly to criminal activity. How do we get that? Marcus thought about the camera he'd found at the house on the hill. The surveillance equipment. The arrogance of a man who thought he was untouchable. We let him think he's winning. Eleanor stared at him. What? Victor's biggest weakness is his ego. He's used to people backing down. He expects you to give up and me to disappear. When we don't, he'll make a mistake. And if that mistake gets someone killed, Marcus met her gaze steadily. That's not going to happen. You can't promise that. No, he admitted. But I can promise I won't let him hurt you again. Or Luna, or those puppies. Whatever comes, I'll be standing between you and it. Eleanor reached out and took his hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. My brother was a soldier too, she said quietly. Korea. He came back different, harder. But underneath all that hardness, he was still the boy who cried when our dog died. Still the man who planted flowers on our mother's grave every spring. She squeezed his hand. I see that same thing in you. The hardness and the heart. Don't let Victor take the heart away. Marcus didn't know how to respond, so he just squeezed back and let the moment stand. That night, Marcus set up a security rotation. He walked the perimeter every 2 hours, checking for signs of intrusion. Luna walked with him each time, her senses far sharper than his, her instincts tuned to threats he couldn't perceive. On his 3rd round, just after 2 a.m., Luna stopped suddenly and growled. Marcus froze. What is it, girl? Luna's attention was fixed on the tree line about 50 yards east. Her hackles were raised, her body low and ready. Then Marcus heard it. The snap of a branch. The soft crunch of footsteps on frozen ground. He pulled out his phone and activated the camera, switching to night mode. The screen showed nothing but darkness and shadows. But Luna knew, and Marcus had learned to trust her more than any technology. "I know you're there," he called out, his voice carrying in the still air. "You've got about 30 seconds to show yourself before I come find you." Silence. Then movement. A figure emerged from the trees with hands raised. Male, young, early 20s maybe, wearing dark clothes and a terrified expression. "Don't shoot," the kid blurted. "Please, man, I'm just doing a job." Marcus approached slowly, Luna at his side. The young man's fear intensified with each step. "What job? I was just supposed to watch, report back if anyone came or went. That's all, I swear." "Report to who?" The kid hesitated. Luna growled deeper this time. "Victor Whitmore." "Okay, Victor Whitmore hired me. $500 to keep an eye on this place for a week." Marcus studied the kid's face. Early 20s, scruffy beard, the desperate look of someone who needed money badly enough to take stupid risks. "What's your name?" "Danny. Danny Reeves." "Danny, do you know what Victor Whitmore is planning to do to the woman in that house?" Danny's eyes flickered with something that might have been conscience. "I don't know details. I just know he wants her gone. Said she was standing in the way of progress." "Progress?" Marcus let the word hang between them. "Is that what he calls terrorizing a 75-year-old woman, abandoning animals on the highway to die, breaking windows in the middle of the night?" Danny's face went pale. "I didn't know about any of that. I just needed the money. My mom's sick and the bills are— I don't care about your bills." Marcus stepped closer. Danny flinched. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell Victor you saw nothing, that the house was quiet, that Marcus Cole is just some guy who adopted some dogs and minds his own business. And if I don't, then I tell the sheriff I caught you trespassing on private property at 2 a.m. Then I tell him you admitted to being paid by Victor Whitmore for surveillance. Then the sheriff starts asking questions that Victor doesn't want asked." Danny's eyes widened. Victor said the sheriff was on his side. Maybe, but sheriffs answer to voters, and voters don't like hearing about rich men paying kids to spy on their grandmothers. The logic landed. Marcus could see Danny working through it, calculating his options, realizing he had none. "Fine," Danny muttered. "I'll tell him what you said. But you didn't hear this from me. Victor's planning something big. This weekend. He told me to be ready to assist with relocation on Saturday." Marcus felt his blood chill. Relocation. "That's all he said. I don't know what it means." Marcus knew exactly what it meant. "Get out of here," he said. "And Danny, if I see you again, we won't be having a conversation." Danny disappeared into the darkness like he'd been fired from a cannon. Marcus stood there for a long moment, Luna pressing against his leg. Saturday. 3 days away. Whatever Victor was planning, they had 3 days to stop it. Marcus didn't sleep the rest of that night. By dawn, he had a plan. "It's risky," Sarah said when he called her at 6 a.m. "If Victor realizes what you're doing, he won't. He's too confident, too used to winning. Pride comes before the fall." Something like that? Sarah agreed to arrive in Pinewood Ridge by Thursday evening. She would bring cameras, recording equipment, and documentation of Horizon's activities in other states. If they could get Victor to admit even part of his scheme on tape, it would be enough to trigger a federal investigation. "There's one more thing," Sarah said before hanging up. "I ran a background check on Victor Whitmore. Guess what I found? Tell me." "He has a sealed juvenile record. I couldn't get details, but the jurisdiction was interesting. Same county where his father died." Marcus felt the hair on his arms rise. His father died in an accident. Hunting trip. That's the official story. But there was an investigation, a long one, and Victor was the only witness. The implication hung between them like smoke. Are you saying, I'm not saying anything, just pointing out that Victor Whitmore has been eliminating obstacles for a lot longer than anyone realizes? Marcus ended the call and sat in the kitchen watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and red. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a robe, her face creased with sleep and worry. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said. Just thinking. About Victor. Marcus nodded. Eleanor sat down across from him. I've been thinking too. About my brother. About the day he died. Eleanor, you don't have to. I want to. Her voice was steady now. Richard was an experienced hunter. Knew those woods better than anyone. And Victor was 18, just back from his first year of college. She paused. Richard always said Victor was too eager, too aggressive, the kind of hunter who took shots he shouldn't take. Richard was going to talk to him about it, that weekend, the weekend of the accident. Marcus watched her carefully. What are you saying? Eleanor's eyes met his. I'm saying I've spent 27 years telling myself it was just bad luck, a terrible tragedy. But now I'm not so sure. The words hung in the air between them. If Victor killed his own father, Marcus said slowly, then he's capable of anything. Yes. Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. Luna whined and pressed her nose against Eleanor's hand. The old woman smiled sadly and stroked her head. She knows, Eleanor said. Animals always know. That's why Victor hated her. Because she could see through him. Marcus looked at Luna, at the intelligence in her amber eyes, at the fierce protectiveness in her stance. Then we use that, he said. We use everything we have. The next 2 days passed in tense preparation. Sarah arrived Thursday evening with a van full of equipment and a determination that matched Marcus's own. I've been chasing Blackridge Capital for 3 years, she told them as she set up cameras in strategic locations around the property. They've destroyed lives across 4 states. If we can nail Victor Whitmore, the whole operation starts to unravel. Eleanor watched the preparations with growing anxiety. What if it doesn't work? What if he's too smart? Sarah looked at her with compassion. Mrs. Whitmore, men like Victor aren't smart. They're just confident. They've never been challenged, so they think they can't be beaten. That's their weakness. Marcus was checking the security feeds when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Cole. Victor's voice was smooth as silk. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. What do you want? Just calling to give you one last chance. My offer still stands. Walk away. Take whatever my aunt has promised you and disappear. No hard feelings. Marcus looked at Eleanor, at Sarah, at Luna, who had risen at the sound of Victor's voice. I don't think so. Victor's laugh was soft and dangerous. You know, I did some research on you. 12 years in the Navy SEALs. Multiple deployments. Impressive record. Get to the point. The point is that men like you are trained to follow orders, to protect the mission. But this isn't your mission, Mr. Cole. This is a family matter, and family matters have a way of getting complicated. Marcus felt his grip tighten on the phone. Is that a threat? It's an observation. My aunt is 75 years old. She's fragile, confused. The stress of all this conflict can't be good for her health. If anything happens to her, happens. Victor's voice dripped with false concern. I'm worried about my aunt's well-being. That's all. I want what's best for her. unlike some people who've inserted themselves into a situation they don't understand. Marcus forced himself to stay calm. I understand perfectly. You want her land. You've been lying and manipulating to get it. And you're scared because for the first time in your life, someone's standing in your way. Silence. When Victor spoke again, the smoothness was gone. Saturday, he said. One way or another, this ends Saturday. The line went dead. Marcus lowered the phone. Eleanor was staring at him with wide eyes. What did he say? He confirmed our timeline. Whatever he's planning, it happens in 2 days. Sarah was already at her laptop, fingers flying over the keys. I just got access to county records. Marcus, you need to see this. He crossed to her and looked at the screen. Victor filed an emergency petition for conservatorship yesterday. He's claiming Eleanor is mentally unfit to manage her own affairs. If it goes through, he'll have complete control over her property. Eleanor made a sound like a wounded animal. No, he can't. The hearing is scheduled for Saturday morning, Sarah continued. 9 a.m. at the county courthouse. Marcus stared at the screen. The timeline suddenly made sense. Victor wasn't planning violence. He was planning something worse. Legal theft. Can we fight it? Eleanor asked desperately. Can we prove I'm not? Of course we can, Marcus said firmly. But we need to do more than defend. We need to expose him. He turned to Sarah. Can you get everything we have organized by Friday night? Documents, recordings, testimony. I can try. Don't try. Do it. Sarah nodded and went back to work. Marcus knelt in front of Eleanor, taking her trembling hands in his. Listen to me. Victor thinks he's going to walk into that courthouse and take everything from you, but he doesn't know what's coming. He doesn't know about Sarah's investigation. He doesn't know about Danny. He doesn't know that we've been recording everything. What if it's not enough? It will be enough. Marcus squeezed her hands. But I need you to do something hard. I need you to go into that courthouse on Saturday and show everyone exactly who you are. Not a confused old woman. Not a burden. A survivor. A fighter. The woman who raised Luna and loved her puppies enough to search for them when everyone else gave up. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. I don't know if I can. You can. I've seen it in you from the first moment we met. The same strength that Luna has. The same refusal to quit. A small smile broke through Eleanor's tears. You know, for a tough Navy SEAL, you're surprisingly good at pep talks. Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my reputation. Luna chose that moment to rise and walk to Eleanor's side. She sat down, pressed her shoulder against the old woman's leg, and looked up with those steady, amber eyes. Eleanor laughed through her tears. I think she's agreeing with you. She usually does. She's smart that way. The moment stretched between them. 3 humans and a dog bound together by circumstance and choice. Then Sarah's voice cut through. Marcus, you need to see this. He crossed to her laptop. On the screen was a photograph from a local newspaper archive, dated 27 years ago. A hunting accident. Richard Whitmore, age 52, dead from a gunshot wound. His son Victor, age 18, the only witness. But it was the photo that made Marcus's blood run cold. Victor stood at his father's funeral dressed in black, his face appropriately somber. But his eyes were smiling. He's been doing this his whole life, Sarah said quietly. Eliminating anyone who stands in his way. Marcus stared at the photograph, at the cold calculation in those young eyes. Saturday was 2 days away, and they were going to war with a man who had learned to kill before he learned to vote. Friday arrived wrapped in silence, the kind of silence that preceded storms. Marcus spent the morning going over their strategy with Sarah, while Eleanor sat with Luna and the puppies, drawing strength from their simple presence. The conservatorship hearing starts at 9, Sarah said. Judge Margaret Thornton is presiding. She's known for being thorough. That works in our favor. What about the evidence? I've prepared a packet with everything we have. Horizon's acquisition patterns, Victor's financial connections to Black Ridge, the surveillance footage from the house on the hill, Danny Reeves's testimony. Will Danny actually show up? Sarah hesitated. I spoke to him this morning. He's scared, but he's agreed. His mother's condition is getting worse. He can't afford another black mark on his record. Marcus nodded. It wasn't ideal relying on a frightened kid who had already proven willing to take money for questionable work, but it was what they had. Eleanor appeared in the doorway. I want to say something. They turned to look at her. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you both to know that these past few days have meant more to me than the past 10 years combined. Her voice was steady, stronger than Marcus had ever heard it. I spent so long being afraid, of Victor, of losing everything, of dying alone. She walked to Luna and knelt beside her. But this dog, she taught me something. When I found her on my porch 5 years ago, she was skin and bones, beaten down by life. But she didn't give up. She kept fighting, kept loving, kept trusting. Eleanor looked up at Marcus. You're like her, you know. Both of you found each other on the side of the road. Both of you were lost, and both of you refused to let that be the end of the story. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of the knot that had been there since Kabul, since the explosion, since the moment he decided that surviving was a punishment rather than a gift. Eleanor, let me finish. She stood slowly, her back straight, her chin lifted. Tomorrow, I'm going to walk into that courthouse, and I'm going to look my nephew in the eye, and I'm going to tell the truth. All of it, including the parts I've been hiding from myself for 27 years. Sarah and Marcus exchanged glances. What parts? Sarah asked carefully. Eleanor's face hardened. The day Richard died, Victor came to see me first. Before the hunting trip, he asked me if I knew about the trust, the one Richard had set up for me in case anything happened to him. She paused. I didn't know. Richard never told me. But Victor knew. He had found the documents in his father's study. He was furious. He said Richard was trying to cheat him out of his inheritance. Marcus felt the pieces clicking into place. And the next day my brother was dead, and Victor became sole heir to everything except the land that Richard had already signed over to me. Sarah was typing furiously. This changes everything. If we can prove that Victor had prior knowledge of the trust. You can prove it, Eleanor said. Because I still have the letter Victor wrote me that day. I kept it. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me always knew I would need it. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a yellowed envelope folded and worn from years of being hidden. I'm done being afraid, she said. Whatever it costs me, I'm done. Marcus took the envelope carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten, dated the day before Richard Whitmore's death. The words were angry, accusatory, threatening, and they changed everything. That night, Marcus sat on the porch while the others slept. Luna lay beside him, her head resting on his boot, her eyes open and watchful. Tomorrow's the day, he murmured. One way or another. Luna's ear twitched. She lifted her head and looked at him with those amber eyes that seemed to see everything. You knew, didn't you? From the moment Eleanor took you in, you knew something was wrong with Victor. Luna didn't answer. Of course she didn't. She was just a dog. But Marcus had stopped believing that weeks ago. He had seen her lead him to the surveillance equipment, seen her position herself to protect Eleanor, seen her sense danger before it arrived. Luna wasn't just a dog. She was a guardian. A witness. A survivor. Just like him. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said quietly, "I want you to know something. You saved my life that day on the highway, not just because you needed help, but because you showed me that some things are worth fighting for." Luna stood and pressed her nose against his hand. Her breath was warm. Her presence was solid. Real. Marcus wrapped his arms around her and held on. For the first time in 6 months, he didn't feel alone. For the first time since Kabul, he felt ready. The sun would rise in 6 hours. And when it did, they would face whatever came together. Saturday morning arrived with a cold that cut through clothing and settled in the bones. Marcus was awake before dawn, checking equipment, reviewing documents, running through scenarios in his mind, the way he had before every mission. Eleanor emerged from her room at 6, dressed in a navy blue suit that looked like it hadn't been worn in years. Her silver hair was pinned back neatly, her face pale, but determined. "I found this in my closet," she said, smoothing the fabric. "I wore it to Richard's funeral. Seemed fitting." Marcus nodded. "You look strong." "I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm about to throw up." "That's how you know it matters." Sarah came through the door with coffee and a folder thick with documents. "Danny confirmed. He'll be at the courthouse by 8:30. I've also got a contact at the state attorney's office who's very interested in what we have on Black Ridge Capital." Luna rose from her place beside the puppies and walked to Eleanor. She pressed her head against the old woman's hand, her amber eyes steady and calm. Eleanor smiled despite her nerves. "She knows, doesn't she?" "She always knows," Marcus said. They left the cabin at 7:15. Sarah drove while Marcus sat in the back with Eleanor, who clutched the yellowed envelope like a lifeline. Luna stayed behind with the puppies, her reluctance to let Eleanor leave evident in every line of her body. "I'll be back." Eleanor had promised her, kneeling to stroke her head. "I promise I'll come back." Luna had whined softly, but stayed where she was, her eyes following Eleanor, until the car disappeared down the driveway. The courthouse sat in the center of Pinewood Ridge, a brick building that had served the community for over a century. By 8 o'clock, a small crowd had gathered on the steps, word having spread through town about the Whitmore conservatorship hearing. Marcus spotted Victor's Mercedes in the parking lot. His jaw tightened. "He's already here," Sarah said. "Good. Let him think he has the advantage." They entered through the main doors and made their way to courtroom B. The hallway was quiet, the kind of institutional silence that made every footstep echo. Victor was waiting outside the courtroom, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits. His lawyers, Marcus assumed. Victor himself looked immaculate as always, not a hair out of place, his smile firmly in position. "Aunt Eleanor." Victor stepped forward with arms open wide. "I'm so glad you decided to come. I was worried this whole ordeal might be too much for you." Eleanor stopped walking. Her body tensed, but her voice remained steady. "Don't touch me." Victor's smile flickered. "I understand you're upset. This has been a difficult time for everyone. But I want you to know whatever happens today, I'm only doing this because I love you. You don't know what love means." The words landed like a slap. Victor's expression hardened for just a second before the mask slid back into place. "We'll talk after the hearing," he said smoothly. "I think you'll feel differently once you understand what I'm trying to do for you." He turned and walked into the courtroom, his lawyers following like shadows. Eleanor exhaled shakily. Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did good." I wanted to scream at him, tell him I know everything. "You'll get your chance, but we do this right, by the book." Sarah checked her phone. Danny just texted. He's here. He's scared, but he's ready. Good. Let's finish this. The courtroom was smaller than Marcus expected. A few rows of wooden benches, a judge's bench at the front, an American flag standing in the corner. Maybe 24 people had filed in to watch, most of them locals who had known the Whitmore family for decades. Judge Margaret Thornton entered precisely at 9 o'clock. She was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She took her seat and surveyed the room with the practiced calm of someone who had seen every kind of human drama. This is a hearing regarding the petition for conservatorship filed by Victor Whitmore concerning Eleanor Whitmore, she announced. Mr. Whitmore, you may present your case. Victor stood buttoning his jacket in a single smooth motion. Thank you, Your Honor. This is a difficult matter for me personally. Eleanor Whitmore is my aunt, my only living family, and I love her dearly. He paused, letting the words settle. But love sometimes requires difficult decisions. Over the past several months, I have watched my aunt's mental state deteriorate significantly. She has become confused, paranoid, and increasingly unable to manage her own affairs. Eleanor's hands clenched in her lap. Marcus touched her arm lightly, a reminder to wait. She has made several irrational decisions regarding her property, Victor continued. She has refused reasonable offers that would secure her financial future. She has taken in stray animals despite being unable to care for them properly. And most recently, she has fallen under the influence of a stranger, a man with no connection to our family, who has isolated her from those who truly care about her welfare. Victor glanced at Marcus. His smile was triumphant. I am not asking this court to punish my aunt. I am asking for the authority to protect her from herself and from those who would exploit her vulnerability. Judge Thornton nodded. Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. Mrs. Whitmore, do you have representation? Eleanor stood slowly, her legs trembling, but her voice clear. I'm representing myself, Your Honor, with the assistance of these two individuals. And they are Marcus Cole and Sarah Chen. Mr. Cole is a friend. Ms. Chen is an investigative journalist. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Victor's smile faltered. A journalist, he turned to the judge. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. My aunt is clearly being manipulated. Mr. Whitmore. Judge Thornton's voice cut like a knife. You will have your opportunity to respond. Mrs. Whitmore, please continue. Eleanor took a breath. Your Honor, my nephew is not trying to protect me. He is trying to steal from me. The murmur became a rumble. Victor shot to his feet. That's absurd. Your Honor, sit down, Mr. Whitmore. Victor sat, his face flushed with anger. Eleanor's voice grew stronger. My property sits on top of a lithium deposit worth hundreds of millions of dollars. My nephew has known about this for months. He has been working with a company called Horizon Development Group to acquire my land through fraudulent means. She turned to look directly at Victor. When I refused to sell, he took my dog and her puppies and abandoned them on a highway in the middle of winter. He hoped they would die. He hoped losing them would break me. That's a lie. Victor was on his feet again, his composure cracking. Mr. Whitmore, Judge Thornton slammed her gavel. One more outburst and I will hold you in contempt. Sit down and remain silent. Victor's lawyers pulled him back into his seat, whispering urgently. Sarah stood and approached the bench. Your Honor, I have documentation that supports Mrs. Whitmore's claims, financial records linking Victor Whitmore to Horizon Development Group and its parent company, Blackridge Capital. Surveillance footage from a property that was presented to Mrs. Whitmore as a gift, but was actually being used to monitor her activities, and testimony from a witness who was paid by Mr. Whitmore to conduct surveillance on Mrs. Whitmore's residence. She handed the folder to the judge. I also have evidence of similar patterns by Black Ridge Capital in Wyoming, Nevada, and Utah. In each case, elderly landowners were pressured to sell their property. Several of those landowners died under suspicious circumstances shortly after the sales were completed. The courtroom erupted. Judge Thornton banged her gavel repeatedly. "Order! I will have order in this court!" Victor was whispering frantically to his lawyers, his face pale, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. "Your Honor?" One of Victor's lawyers stood, his voice strained. "This is all highly prejudicial and irrelevant to the matter at hand. Your client is accused of fraud and potentially worse," Judge Thornton interrupted. "I think it's very relevant indeed." She turned to Sarah. "You mentioned a witness. Is this witness present?" "Yes, Your Honor, Danny Reeves." The door at the back of the courtroom opened. Danny walked in, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. His face was pale, his hands shoved in his pockets, but he kept walking until he reached the front. "Mr. Reeves," Judge Thornton studied him. "Do you understand you are about to give testimony under oath?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you understand the penalties for perjury?" Danny swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am." "Then please tell the court what you know about Victor Whitmore's activities." Danny's eyes flickered to Victor. For a moment, Marcus thought he might bolt, but then Danny's jaw tightened, and he faced the judge. "Victor Whitmore paid me $500 to watch Mrs. Whitmore's residence. I was supposed to report who came and went, what they did when they slept. He told me it was for her own protection, but I knew that was a lie." "How did you know?" "Because of what he said when he hired me." Danny's voice steadied. He said he needed to know everything about the soldier. He said that once he had his aunt's property, he would deal with the soldier permanently. The courtroom went silent. Victor stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "He's lying. This kid is a drug addict, a criminal. He'd say anything for money." "Victor!" Judge Thornton's voice was ice. "I warned you. You can't believe this. This is all a setup. They're trying to steal what's rightfully mine. What's rightfully yours." Eleanor rose, her voice ringing through the courtroom. "Richard left me that land. He signed it over to me because he knew what you were." She pulled the yellowed envelope from her pocket. "This is a letter you wrote me the day before my brother died, the day before your father died. You were furious because you'd found out about the trust he'd set up for me. You threatened me, Victor. You said you would never let me take what was yours." She handed the letter to the judge. "The next day, Richard was dead, shot on a hunting trip, with only you as a witness." The silence that followed was absolute. Victor stood frozen, his face drained of all color. His lawyers were staring at him with growing horror. "That was an accident," Victor said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everyone knows it was an accident." "Was it?" Eleanor's eyes never left his face. "Is that why you've spent 27 years making sure no one asked questions? Is that why you've destroyed everyone who got in your way? Because accidents don't haunt you, Victor. Accidents don't keep you up at night." "Shut up. Is that what you told yourself when you threw Luna and her puppies on that highway, that it was just an accident, that they didn't matter? I said shut up!" Victor lunged forward. Marcus was already moving, placing himself between Eleanor and her nephew. Victor's fist caught him on the jaw, snapping his head back. Chaos erupted. The bailiff rushed forward. Victor's lawyers tried to restrain him. People were shouting, standing, pushing toward the front of the room. Marcus grabbed Victor's arm and twisted, using the man's momentum against him. Victor went down hard, his face slamming into the wooden floor. "Don't move," Marcus said quietly. Victor struggled, cursing. But Marcus held him pinned with the ease of 12 years of combat training. Judge Thornton was on her feet, gavel pounding. "This hearing is suspended. Bailiff, take Mr. Whitmore into custody." It took 3 men to pull Victor to his feet. His face was bleeding from where he'd hit the floor. His eyes were wild, all pretense of control gone. "You don't understand," he screamed as they dragged him toward the side door. "That land is worth hundreds of millions. It should have been mine. It was always supposed to be mine." The door slammed shut behind him. The courtroom slowly settled. People were talking in hushed voices, processing what they'd just witnessed. Judge Thornton sat back down, her face grim. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said, "in light of what has transpired here today, I am dismissing this petition for conservatorship. Additionally, I am requesting that the county prosecutor's office open an immediate investigation into the matters raised in this hearing." She looked at Eleanor with something like respect. "You were very brave to come forward. I'm sorry it took so long for someone to listen." Eleanor's legs finally gave out. She sank onto the bench, tears streaming down her face. Marcus sat beside her and put his arm around her shoulders. "It's over," he said. "You did it." "We did it," Eleanor whispered. "All of us." Sarah was already on her phone coordinating with her contact at the state attorney's office. The story was going to break within hours. Blackridge Capital's entire operation would be exposed. Marcus looked around the courtroom, at the stunned faces of the townspeople who had known Victor all his life, at the lawyers who were now scrambling to distance themselves from their client, at the judge who was reviewing the evidence with the careful attention of someone who understood that justice had almost been denied. He thought about Luna waiting at the cabin with the puppies, about the highway where he'd found them, about the choice he'd made to stop when everyone else drove past. Some decisions changed everything. This was one of them. An hour later, Marcus stood outside the courthouse, watching Victor being loaded into a sheriff's cruiser. The man who had terrorized his aunt, murdered his father, and left innocent animals to die, was finally facing consequences. Victor's eyes found Marcus through the window. The hatred there was pure, undiluted. Marcus held his gaze until the cruiser pulled away. "Mr. Cole," a voice behind him. He turned to find Sheriff Davis approaching. The man looked uncomfortable, caught between authority and embarrassment. "I owe you an apology," Davis said stiffly. "When Victor first came to me about his aunt, I believed him. I shouldn't have." "No, you shouldn't have." Davis nodded, accepting the rebuke. "For what it's worth, I've already contacted the state police about reopening the investigation into Richard Whitmore's death. If Victor really did kill his own father, he did, then he'll pay for it. I'll make sure of that." Marcus watched the sheriff walk away. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Eleanor appeared at his side, Sarah supporting her arm. The old woman looked exhausted, but lighter, as if a weight she'd carried for decades had finally been lifted. "I want to go home," Eleanor said. "I want to see Luna." Marcus smiled. "Then let's go." They drove back to the cabin in silence. Not the heavy silence of fear or anticipation, but the gentle quiet of people who had been through something together and come out the other side. When they pulled into the driveway, Luna was waiting on the porch. She had somehow known they were coming, had positioned herself at the exact spot where she could see the road. Eleanor was out of the car before it fully stopped. She walked up the steps and knelt in front of Luna, wrapping her arms around the dog's neck. "I told you I'd come back," she whispered. "I told you." Luna's tail wagged slowly. She pressed her nose against Eleanor's cheek, her amber eyes closing in contentment. Marcus stood at the bottom of the steps, watching them. Sarah came to stand beside him. "You know this isn't really over," she said quietly. "The investigation will take months, maybe years. Victor's lawyers will fight everything." "I know. And Blackridge Capital has resources, money, connections. They're not going to just disappear." "I know that too." Sarah looked at him. "So, what are you going to do?" Marcus watched Eleanor rise to her feet, watched Luna press against her legs, watched the puppies tumble out through the cabin door to greet their mother and their guardian. "I'm going to stay," he said, "for as long as they need me." Sarah smiled. "The Navy SEAL becomes a dog whisperer. That's quite a career change." "Maybe. Or maybe it's exactly what I was supposed to be doing all along." That evening, Marcus sat on the porch as the sun went down. Luna lay at his feet, the puppies curled around her in a warm pile of fur and breathing. Eleanor had gone to bed early, exhausted, but peaceful. His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Victor's being held without bail. Judge cited flight risk and danger to community. State attorney moving forward with fraud charges. Federal investigators interested in Blackridge connection. "You did good, Marcus." He put the phone away and looked out at the darkening trees. 6 months ago, he had driven to Montana to disappear. To escape the memories that haunted him, the guilt that crushed him, the feeling that survival was a punishment rather than a gift. He had found something else entirely. A purpose. A family. A reason to keep going. Luna lifted her head and looked at him, her amber eyes glowing in the fading light. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly, "for not giving up on your babies, for not giving up on Eleanor, for not giving up on me." Luna's tail thumped once against the porch boards. It was, Marcus realized, the only answer he needed. The week following Victor's arrest should have been peaceful. It wasn't. Marcus woke on Tuesday to the sound of Luna growling at the window. Low, sustained, dangerous. He was on his feet before his eyes fully opened. "What is it, girl?" Luna didn't look at him. Her attention was fixed on something outside her body, rigid, her hackles raised. Marcus grabbed his phone and checked the security cameras Sarah had installed. The driveway was empty. The tree line showed nothing. But Luna didn't make false alarms. He moved to the window and scanned the darkness. Nothing. Just shadows and silence. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. "Mr. Cole." The voice was unfamiliar. Male. Calm in a way that felt rehearsed. "Victor Whitmore sends his regards." Marcus felt his blood chill. "Victor's in jail. Jail is temporary. Loyalty is not." A pause. "You've made some very powerful enemies. I suggest you consider carefully what happens next." "Who is this? Someone who believes in finishing what was started. Have a pleasant evening." The line went dead. Marcus stood motionless, the phone still pressed to his ear. Luna had stopped growling, but she remained at the window watching. "Marcus?" Eleanor's voice came from the hallway, thin with sleep and worry. "What's wrong?" He forced his expression into something neutral. "Nothing. Go back to bed." "Don't lie to me. I heard Luna." Marcus turned to face her. Eleanor stood in her bathrobe, her silver hair loose around her shoulders, her eyes sharp despite the hour. "There was a phone call," he admitted. "A threat." Eleanor's face paled, but she didn't retreat. From Victor. From someone working for him. Or for Blackridge. So it's not over. No. Marcus met her gaze. It's not over. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked to Luna and knelt beside her, stroking her head. "When Richard came home from Korea," she said softly, "he told me that the war never really ended. It just moved inside him, changed addresses." She looked up at Marcus. "I'm 75 years old. I've buried my parents, my brother, and my husband. I've watched my nephew try to destroy everything I love. And I'm still standing." Her voice hardened. "Whatever they're planning, whatever they send, I'm not running. This is my home, my land, my family." She gestured to Luna and the puppies. "Our family." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. The same feeling he'd had on the highway when Luna had looked at him with those amber eyes. Recognition. Belonging. "Then we fight," he said. "Together." The next morning, Marcus called Sarah. "I need everything you have on Blackridge's leadership," he said. "Names, addresses, connections." "Marcus, what happened? They called me last night. Victor might be in jail, but someone's still running his operation." Sarah's typing was audible through the phone. "Blackridge's CEO is a man named Harrison Cole. No relation. He's connected to half the private equity firms on the East Coast and has lawyers on retainer in every state where they operate." "Can he be touched?" "Legally. It's complicated. He's careful. Never puts his name on anything directly. Uses intermediaries for everything." "Then we need to make it personal." Sarah paused. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that men like Harrison Cole care about one thing: reputation. If we can make Blackridge toxic enough, the investors will run. The partners will distance themselves. The whole thing collapses from the inside." "That's a big if." "You got a better idea?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. "I might. There's a reporter at the Wall Street Journal who's been investigating private equity land grabs for years. If I can get her interested in Blackridge, do it. Whatever it takes." Marcus hung up and found Eleanor in the kitchen feeding the puppies. They had grown significantly in the weeks since he'd found them. Shadow was still the smallest, but his dark eyes held an intelligence that reminded Marcus of Luna. Scout was all energy bouncing from corner to corner. Hope remained calm and watchful, her pale chest marking her as different from her siblings. "They're getting big," Eleanor said, smiling despite the tension of the morning. "Luna's going to have her paws full when they start really running around." "She's a good mother." "The best." Eleanor set down the feeding bowl. "Marcus, I've been thinking about the house on the hill, the one Victor used for surveillance." "What about it? The cameras are gone. The surveillance equipment is gone. It's just sitting there empty." She looked at him. "I want to do something with it. Something good." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Like what? A sanctuary for animals like Luna, for people like me who need somewhere safe to go." Her voice strengthened. "I spent years being afraid. I want to spend whatever time I have left making sure others don't have to feel that way." The idea landed with unexpected weight. Marcus thought about the veterans he knew who had come home broken, looking for purpose. About the animals abandoned on highways and in shelters. About the elderly pushed aside by families who saw them as burdens. "It would take money," he said carefully. "Resources. Time. I have money. Richard left me more than Victor ever knew about." Eleanor's eyes sparkled with something Marcus hadn't seen before. Determination. Hope. "And I have time. Maybe not forever, but enough." She reached out and took his hand. "Will you help me?" Marcus looked at her weathered fingers wrapped around his. At Luna, watching from her spot near the puppies. At the 3 small lives he'd carried off that frozen highway. "Yeah," he said. "I'll help." 3 days later, the Wall Street Journal ran the first story. Sarah called Marcus at 6 in the morning, her voice breathless with excitement. Check your email. Front page of the business section. Marcus opened his laptop and felt his heart rate climb. The headline read, Private equity giant Blackridge Capital accused of predatory land practices targeting elderly owners. The article detailed everything. The shell companies, the pressure tactics, the suspicious deaths. Eleanor's case was featured prominently with quotes from Judge Thornton and Sheriff Davis. But it was the final paragraph that made Marcus smile. Federal investigators have opened a formal inquiry into Blackridge Capital's acquisition practices. Sources close to the investigation indicate that CEO Harrison Cole may face personal liability for the company's actions. They're running, Sarah said. 3 of Blackridge's major investors pulled out this morning. 2 board members resigned. And Cole, silent so far, but his lawyers are working overtime. Marcus forwarded the article to Eleanor, who was already awake and sitting on the porch with Luna. Did you see it? He asked, stepping outside. Eleanor held up her phone, tears streaming down her face. I never believed. Believe it. You did this. You and Luna. Eleanor laughed through her tears. A 75-year-old woman and a dog brought down $1 billion company. If that's not a miracle, I don't know what is. Luna lifted her head and rested it on Eleanor's knee. Her amber eyes were calm, satisfied. The phone calls stopped. The shadows retreated. For the first time since Marcus had arrived in Pinewood Ridge, the silence felt like peace instead of a threat. But peace, Marcus knew, was always temporary. The letter arrived on a Friday afternoon, hand-delivered by a courier who wouldn't give his name. Marcus opened it, while Eleanor watched Luna alert at her side. The handwriting was precise, controlled. The message was simple. Mr. Cole, you've caused considerable damage to interests I represent. I respect competence, even when it's inconvenient. I would like to meet, alone, tomorrow, noon, the diner in town. No tricks, no threats, just conversation. H.C. Eleanor's face went white. Harrison Cole wants to meet you. Apparently. You can't go. It's a trap. Marcus read the letter again. Something about the tone bothered him. Not threatening exactly. Something else. Curious. Maybe, he said. Or maybe he's smart enough to know when he's beaten. Men like him don't get beaten. They just find new ways to win. Then maybe it's time someone taught him what losing feels like. Marcus arrived at the diner at 11:30, wanting to control the ground before Cole arrived. The lunch crowd was thin, a few locals at the counter, an elderly couple in the corner booth. He chose a table near the back with clear sight lines to both exits and sat with his back to the wall. At exactly noon, the door opened. Harrison Cole was smaller than Marcus expected. Mid-50s, lean with silver hair cropped close and eyes that calculated everything they saw. He wore a simple dark suit, no tie, the kind of understated elegance that cost more than most people's cars. He spotted Marcus immediately and walked over without hesitation. Mr. Cole, he said, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. Marcus didn't take it. Talk. Cole withdrew his hand without offense and sat down across from him. I appreciate directness. It's rare in my world. Your world is falling apart. Yes. Cole's expression didn't change. It is. Thanks largely to you. And Eleanor Whitmore, and Luna, and a lot of people who got tired of being pushed around. The dog. Cole's lips curved slightly. I must admit I underestimated the dog. Most people do. A waitress approached. Cole ordered coffee. Marcus ordered nothing. When she left, Cole leaned forward slightly. I'm not here to threaten you, Mr. Cole, or to negotiate. I'm here to understand. Understand what? Why? Cole's eyes searched his face. I've destroyed careers, broken companies, eliminated competitors. I've never been stopped by a retired Navy SEAL and a German Shepherd. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. Maybe that's your problem. You see people as obstacles, things to be eliminated. You forgot they might fight back. Victor Whitmore was a tool, useful but unstable. I knew he would eventually become a liability. Cole sipped his coffee. What I didn't anticipate was that his aunt would find someone willing to stand with her. She didn't find me, Luna did. Cole's expression flickered. Interest. The dog chose you. She was sitting on the side of the highway with her puppies praying for someone to stop. I was the one who did. Why? Marcus was quiet for a moment. The question cut deeper than he expected. Because I know what it feels like to be abandoned, he said finally. To be left behind. To wonder if anyone's coming. Cole studied him with new assessment. You served? Afghanistan? Afghanistan, Iraq, places you've never heard of. And you came back broken. I came back different. There's a difference. Cole nodded slowly. My father was Army, Korea. He came back different too. Spent the rest of his life trying to outrun whatever he'd seen over there. Marcus said nothing. This wasn't the conversation he'd expected. I built Black Ridge because I wanted control, Cole continued. Over markets, over outcomes, over everything my father couldn't control. I thought if I had enough power, nothing could hurt me. And now, Cole's mask slipped for just a second. Underneath was exhaustion, fear, humanity. Now I'm facing federal indictment. My investors have fled. My board has abandoned me, and I'm sitting in a diner in Montana talking to a man who did what no one else could. He set down his coffee cup. You won, Mr. Cole. I'm not here to change that. I'm here to ask what you want. Marcus felt the weight of the question. He thought about Eleanor, about Luna, about the house on the hill and the sanctuary they were building. I want you to testify, he said, against Victor Whitmore, against everyone in your organization who participated in these schemes. I want the full truth on the record so no one else gets hurt. Cole's face went still. You're asking me to destroy myself. I'm asking you to do one decent thing in your life. In exchange for what? Nothing. That's the point. Cole stared at him for a long moment. Marcus could see the calculations happening behind his eyes. The cost-benefit analysis of a man who had never done anything without expecting something in return. Then something shifted. My father died when I was 19, Cole said quietly. Heart attack. The doctor said it was stress. I think it was shame. He never talked about what he did in Korea, but it ate at him until there was nothing left. He looked at Marcus with eyes that had finally stopped calculating. I don't want to die like that. Hollow, haunted, alone. Then don't. Cole nodded slowly. I'll testify. Everything I know. Names, dates, transactions, all of it. Marcus felt something release in his chest. Why? Because you're the first person in 30 years who's asked me to do the right thing instead of the smart thing. Cole stood. I'll have my lawyers contact the federal prosecutor tomorrow. He extended his hand again. This time, Marcus took it. The news of Harrison Cole's cooperation broke 2 days later. The federal investigation accelerated. Indictments came down like dominoes. Victor Whitmore, already facing state charges, was now looking at federal conspiracy charges that would keep him in prison for decades. Sarah called with updates every few hours. The story had gone national. Congressional hearings were being scheduled. The entire private equity industry was scrambling to distance itself from Black Ridge's practices. But Marcus barely heard any of it. He was too busy building. The house on the hill had been transformed. Fresh paint, new fencing, a sign at the entrance that Eleanor had designed herself. Luna House, it read, a place for second chances and doctor. Henderson had donated medical supplies. Local businesses had contributed materials. People Marcus had never met showed up with tools and time, wanting to be part of something good. Eleanor oversaw everything from her rocking chair on the porch, Luna at her feet, the puppies playing in the yard. "I never imagined this," she said one evening as the sun went down. "When Victor took Luna and the puppies, I thought my life was over. I thought I had nothing left." Marcus sat beside her, watching Shadow and Scout wrestle, while Hope observed from a safe distance. "You had more than you knew." "I had faith." Eleanor smiled. Faith that someone would stop. Faith that good people still existed. Faith that God wasn't finished with me yet. She reached over and took his hand. "You were my answer, Marcus. You and Luna together." Marcus didn't know what to say. He had spent so long believing he was damaged beyond repair, that the best parts of him had died in the desert with his brothers. But looking at Eleanor, at Luna, at the puppies, who had grown from helpless bundles into curious, vibrant lives. Maybe he had been wrong. Maybe healing didn't mean forgetting. Maybe it meant finding new reasons to keep going. Luna rose suddenly, her ears pricked forward. She wasn't growling this time. Her tail was wagging slowly, deliberately. A car was coming up the driveway. Marcus stood his instincts still sharp despite the weeks of peace. But Luna's body language told him this wasn't a threat. The car stopped. The door opened. A woman got out. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled back, tired eyes that carried more weight than her years should allow. She held a folder to her chest like armor. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, her voice trembling. "Someone in town told me this was a place that helped. I didn't know where else to go." Eleanor rose from her chair and walked down the steps. Luna followed, pressing close to her side. "What's your name, dear?" "Margaret." "Margaret Santos." The woman's composure cracked. "My husband died 6 months ago. His family is trying to take my house. They say I'm not fit to live alone. They say my children would be better off with them." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I just need somewhere safe. Somewhere I can think. Somewhere they can't find me." Eleanor reached out and took the woman's hands. "You found it," she said gently. "You're home now." Marcus watched as Eleanor led Margaret toward the house, Luna walking beside them, like a guardian angel with 4 legs. This was what they had built. Not just a building. Not just a sanctuary. A purpose. His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Cole's testimony is scheduled for next week. Federal prosecutors say it's the biggest break in the case. Victor's lawyers are trying to cut a deal. You did it, Marcus. You really did it." Marcus read the message twice. Then he put the phone away and walked toward the house where Eleanor was making tea and Margaret was meeting the puppies for the first time. The war wasn't over. It never really was. But for the first time in his life, Marcus Cole understood that some battles were worth fighting, and some families were worth finding. 1 year. 365 days since Marcus Cole had stopped his truck on a frozen Montana highway and changed the course of his life forever. He stood on the porch of Luna House, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and tried to remember the man he had been before. The hollow shell driving north with no destination. The ghost searching for a place to disappear. That man felt like a stranger now. "You're up early." Eleanor's voice came from behind him, warm and steady. She moved slower these days, her cane tapping softly against the wooden boards, but her eyes were brighter than they had been a year ago. Couldn't sleep, Marcus admitted. Too much thinking. About the trial. About everything. Eleanor settled into her rocking chair, the one Marcus had built for her birthday 3 months ago. Luna immediately rose from her spot and pressed against the old woman's legs. Victor's sentencing is today, Eleanor said quietly. I've been thinking about it too. Are you going? Eleanor was silent for a long moment. Her hand moved rhythmically over Luna's head, stroking the thick black and tan fur. I thought about it. Spent weeks wondering if I needed to see him one last time. Hear the judge say the words. She shook her head slowly. But then I realized something. What? Victor stopped mattering the day you brought Luna home. Eleanor looked up at him with eyes that held no anger, no bitterness. Only peace. I spent so many years afraid of him, so many years letting him control me even when he wasn't in the room. That's over now. Marcus understood. He had spent years carrying ghosts of his own, men he couldn't save, choices that haunted his sleep, the weight of survival when others hadn't been so lucky. Sometimes letting go is harder than holding on, he said, but it's the only way forward. Eleanor smiled. You taught me that. Luna lifted her head and looked at Marcus. Her amber eyes held the same steady calm they always did, but there was something else there now. Contentment. Belonging. She had come so far from the desperate mother on the highway paws pressed together in silent prayer. They all had. The phone call came at 9 o'clock. Sarah's voice was taut with controlled excitement. It's done. Victor Whitmore received 47 years. No possibility of parole for at least 30. Marcus closed his eyes. 47 years. For the murder of his father. For the fraud. For the conspiracy. For every life he had tried to destroy. Harrison Cole's testimony sealed it, Sarah continued. The jury didn't even deliberate for a full day. And Blackridge dissolved. The assets are being liquidated to compensate victims. Eleanor's case set the precedent. 300 other landowners are filing claims. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. A knot that had been there so long he'd forgotten it existed. Thank you, Sarah, for everything. Don't thank me. You did the hard part. She paused. What happens now? Marcus looked out the window at Luna House. At the kennels they had built for rescued animals. At the small guest cottage where Margaret Santos and her 2 children had been living for the past 8 months. At the garden Eleanor had planted, now dormant under winter snow, but waiting to bloom again in spring. Now we keep building, he said. Eleanor took the news with quiet dignity. She didn't cry, didn't celebrate, just nodded slowly and continued rocking in her chair, her hand never leaving Luna's head. I thought I would feel different, she admitted. Relieved, vindicated, something. What do you feel? Tired? She laughed softly. Is that terrible? My nephew is going to prison for the rest of his life and all I feel is tired. That's not terrible. That's honest. I keep thinking about Richard, about what he would say if he could see all this. Her voice cracked slightly. He never got justice. Not really. Not until now. Marcus knelt beside her chair. Luna shifted to make room, but didn't leave Eleanor's side. He sees it, Marcus said. Wherever he is, he knows. Eleanor's eyes glistened. You really believe that? I believe that some things don't end just because people do. Love doesn't end. Faith doesn't end. The good we do for each other doesn't end. He took her weathered hand in his. Richard loved you. He protected you the only way he knew how. And now you've finished what he started. That matters. That counts. Eleanor squeezed his hand so hard it hurt. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything you've done, for everything you've become." "I didn't do anything. Luna did." They both looked at the dog, who had settled back down with her head on Eleanor's foot. Her amber eyes watched them with patient understanding. "She chose you," Eleanor said. "On that highway, out of all the cars, all the people, she chose you. That wasn't accident. That wasn't luck." "What was it? Faith." Eleanor smiled through her tears. She had faith that if she just waited long enough, the right person would stop. Marcus thought about that moment, the traffic crawling past, the cold seeping through his jacket, the choice that hadn't felt like a choice at all. "I almost didn't stop," he admitted. "I drove past her, 50 yards. I was going to keep going." "But you didn't." "No, I didn't. Because something pulled you back, something stronger than fear or doubt or whatever was making you run." Eleanor's grip tightened. "Call it God, call it fate. Call it whatever you want. But it was real, and it changed everything." Luna lifted her head and rested her chin on Marcus's knee. Her eyes met his, steady and knowing. She had been waiting for him. He understood that now. Waiting for someone broken enough to recognize her pain, strong enough to do something about it. They had saved each other. Margaret Santos found them still sitting on the porch an hour later, Luna draped across both their feet, the puppies now fully grown playing in the yard. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice hesitant, "but there's someone here to see you." Marcus rose immediately, his instincts still sharp after a year of peace. "Who?" "He says his name is Danny Reeves." Marcus felt his eyebrows rise. He hadn't seen Danny since the trial, where the young man had testified with trembling hands, but a steady voice. "Send him back." Danny appeared a moment later, looking different from the scared kid Marcus had caught trespassing in his yard. He was cleaner, better dressed, his eyes holding something that hadn't been there before. Hope. "Mr. Cole." Danny stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me. You testified. You did the right thing. I did a lot of wrong things first." Danny's jaw tightened. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't caught me that night, if I'd just kept doing what Victor paid me to do. But you didn't, because you scared the hell out of me." Danny almost smiled. "And because you gave me a choice. No one had done that before." Marcus descended the steps until he stood face to face with the young man. "Why are you here, Danny?" Danny reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "My mom died last month. The cancer finally won." "I'm sorry. Don't be. She went peaceful, happy even. She got to see me get my GED. Got to see me start community college. She said..." Danny's voice cracked. "She said I finally became the man she always knew I could be." He handed the paper to Marcus. "This is her death certificate. I'm putting it in my past. Everything I was before this year. Everything I did. I'm burying it with her." Marcus unfolded the paper, scanned it, then looked back at Danny. "What do you want to do now?" "I want to help. Here. At Luna House." Danny straightened his shoulders. "I'm good with animals. I'm good with my hands. And I owe you. I owe all of you." Eleanor had risen from her chair and moved to stand beside Marcus. Luna followed, pressing against her legs. "We don't run on debt here," Eleanor said gently. "We run on second chances." "Then give me one." Danny's eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. "Please." Marcus looked at Eleanor, She nodded almost imperceptibly. "There's a cottage behind the main house," Marcus said. "Needs work. Roof leaks. Heating's unreliable. You fix it up, you can stay in it." Danny's face transformed. Relief, gratitude, purpose. "Thank you. Thank you both." He turned to go, then stopped. "Mr. Cole, that night in the woods, when you caught me, you could have hurt me, could have called the cops, could have done anything. Why didn't you—" Marcus thought about the question. About the scared kid in the darkness. About the choices that led them both to this moment. "Because someone once gave me a chance when I didn't deserve one," he said. "Seemed only right to pass it on." Danny nodded slowly, understanding passing between them. Then he walked toward the cottage with steps that looked lighter than they had when he arrived. Luna watched him go, her tail wagging slowly. "You knew," Marcus said to her. "Didn't you?" Luna's only answer was to press closer to his leg. Spring arrived early that year, as if the world itself was ready to move forward. The garden Eleanor had planted burst into color. Tulips and daffodils and crocuses pushing through the soil, reaching for the sun. Margaret's children played among the flowers, their laughter filling spaces that had been silent for too long. The anniversary of Marcus finding Luna passed without fanfare. Just a quiet dinner on the porch, watching the sunset, remembering where they had been, and marveling at where they had arrived. Sarah visited that week, bringing news and gifts, and her particular brand of determined optimism. "The Wall Street Journal is running a follow-up piece," she told them over coffee, "about Luna House, about what you've built here." "We didn't build anything," Eleanor protested. "We just opened our doors." "You built a sanctuary, for animals, for people, for anyone who needed somewhere safe to land." Sarah smiled. "That's not nothing. That's everything." She handed Eleanor a folder. "Applications. From people all over the country who want to do what you've done, start their own Luna houses. Follow your example." Eleanor opened the folder with trembling hands. Page after page of letters, stories of loss and hope and determination. "There are so many," she whispered. "And there will be more." Sarah leaned forward. "You started something, Eleanor. You and Marcus and that ridiculous, wonderful dog. Something that's bigger than this house, bigger than Pinewood Ridge, bigger than any of us." Marcus watched Eleanor's face as she read the letters. The wonder there, the disbelief giving way to something like joy. "I'm 76 years old," she said finally. "A year ago my nephew was trying to steal everything I had. I thought my life was over." She looked up at Sarah, at Marcus, at Luna, who had placed her head on the arm of Eleanor's chair. "Now I'm getting letters from strangers who say I inspired them, who say I gave them hope." She laughed, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "How does that happen? How does someone like me end up here?" "The same way any of us do," Marcus said. "One choice at a time." That evening, after Sarah had left and Margaret had put her children to bed, Marcus walked to the edge of the property where the forest began. Luna followed, as she always did. They stood together in the gathering darkness, man and dog, breathing the pine-scented air. "You know what's funny," Marcus said. "I came to Montana to disappear, to stop existing in any way that mattered." Luna tilted her head, listening. "I was so sure that everything good in me had died, that whatever I had left wasn't worth sharing with anyone." He crouched down, placing his hand on Luna's head. "Then I found you. Or you found me. And everything changed." Luna's amber eyes held his. In them he saw himself reflected. Not the broken soldier. Not the man running from his past. Something new. Something whole. "You taught me that survival isn't enough," he continued. "That living through something is just the beginning. What matters is what you do after. how you use the time you're given, who you choose to love. Luna pressed her nose against his palm. I spent 12 years learning how to destroy things, how to break them, how to end them. Marcus's voice roughened. You taught me how to save them instead, how to protect them, how to help them become what they were always meant to be. He thought about Shadow Scout and Hope, 3 puppies who had been hours from death when he lifted them off that highway. Now they were grown healthy, beloved. Shadow worked with Dr. Henderson, a therapy dog for children facing difficult medical procedures. Scout had become Margaret's constant companion, helping her sons feel safe in a world that had tried to hurt them. Hope stayed at Luna House, training to become a search and rescue dog. 3 lives saved. 3 lives transformed. 3 futures that wouldn't exist without one desperate mother's faith. I don't know why you chose me, Marcus said. Out of everyone who drove past that day, everyone who looked and kept going, you chose me. Luna's tail wagged slowly. But I'm glad you did. I'm so glad you did. He wrapped his arms around her neck and held on. Her warmth surrounded him, her heartbeat steady against his chest. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Luna pulled back and licked his face, her version of a smile. Marcus laughed, the sound surprising him. He couldn't remember the last time he had laughed like that. Free, unguarded, alive. They walked back to the house together, the darkness soft around them, the stars beginning to emerge overhead. Eleanor was waiting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, a mug of tea in her hands. Beautiful night, she said. Beautiful year, Marcus replied. He settled into the chair beside her. Luna lay down between them, her body spanning the space connecting them. Marcus, Eleanor's voice was quiet. What do you think happens next? I don't know. More people needing help, more animals needing homes, more work than we can handle. That sounds overwhelming. It sounds like purpose. Eleanor reached over and took his hand. Her skin was paper-thin fragile, but her grip was strong. I was so afraid of dying alone, she said, of disappearing and having no one notice, no one care. You're not alone anymore. No. She smiled at him, at Luna, at the house they had built together. I'm really not. They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened around them. Luna's breathing slowed steady and peaceful. The sounds of the forest rose and fell, a symphony of cricket songs and rustling leaves. Marcus thought about the highway, about the choice that had brought him here, about all the choices that had followed, each one leading to the next building, something none of them could have imagined. He thought about his brothers who had died in the desert, about the guilt he had carried for surviving, about the years he had spent believing that survival was a punishment rather than a gift. He understood now. Survival wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. Eleanor. Yes, thank you. For what? For needing help, for being brave enough to accept it, for giving me something worth fighting for. Eleanor squeezed his hand. Thank you for stopping, when everyone else drove past, when it would have been so easy to keep going. You stopped. Luna gave me no choice. Luna gave you a reason. The choice was always yours. Marcus looked at the dog lying at their feet, at the house behind them, at the life that had grown from one moment of mercy on a frozen highway. Sometimes the miracle isn't thunder from the sky. It isn't angels with wings or voices from heaven. Sometimes the miracle is a quiet interruption on an ordinary day. A dog who refuses to give up. A tired heart that finally stops running. Sometimes the miracle is saying yes when everything inside you screams no. Marcus had spent 12 years as a Navy SEAL trained to face any enemy, survive any challenge. But nothing had prepared him for the greatest battle of his life, learning to believe that he was worth saving. Luna had taught him that. Eleanor had shown him. And together, they had built something that would outlast all of them. "I'm going to bed," Eleanor said finally, rising slowly from her chair. "Don't stay up too late." "I won't." She paused at the door. "Marcus, whatever happens tomorrow, or the next day, or the year after that, I want you to know something." "What? You are exactly the man you were supposed to become. Every hurt, every scar, every mile you traveled to get here, it all led to this. To us. To what we're building together." Her eyes glistened in the porch light. "You're home now, and home doesn't end." She went inside, leaving Marcus alone with Luna and the stars. The dog lifted her head and rested it on his knee. Her amber eyes caught the light glowing with something beyond intelligence, beyond instinct. Faith. "She's right, you know," Marcus told her. "I am home." Luna's tail thumped once against the porch boards, and in that simple gesture, Marcus Cole found everything he had spent his life searching for. Not the absence of pain, not the erasure of memory, but the presence of love, the certainty of belonging, the knowledge that no matter what came next, he would face it surrounded by those who had chosen him just as surely as he had chosen them. The night settled around them soft and quiet. In Pinewood Ridge, they would later say that Luna House was where miracles happened, where broken things went to heal, where second chances grew like wildflowers. But Marcus knew the truth. The miracle wasn't the house. It wasn't the rescues. It wasn't even the dog who had started it all. The miracle was the choice. To stop when it would have been easier to keep driving. To fight when it would have been safer to run. To love when it would have been less painful to stay closed. To believe that somewhere on a frozen highway a mother dog was praying for someone to save her children, and to answer that prayer with everything he had left to give. That was the miracle. That was enough. That was everything.